Ross, is there a link between fermented foods and the fermentation process used in Dr. Ohhira's probiotics?
That's a good question. Let me spend a little time discussing the fermentation process and how it relates to Dr. Ohhira's probiotics. For thousands of years, people have consumed fermented foods, and people have made fermented foods as a way of preserving their foods. So the fermentation process has been used by many different cultures for centuries. And if you stop to think about it, for most of recorded human history, we did not have refrigeration. So people did not have a way to store things in refrigerators. So they created the fermentation process, and in doing so, fermented foods are preserved. So think about carrots becoming ripe 200 or 300 years ago. Well, you've got fresh carrots to eat for maybe a few weeks or a couple of months. But for the next 10 months or so, you don't have carrots unless you take a lot of those carrots and put them in a fermented storage process that will preserve them. Now, the reason foods get preserved in a fermentation process is that the bacteria in the fermentation process produce short-chain fatty acids like butyric acid and propionic acid and lactic acid and acetic acid and so forth. These acids that are produced by probiotic bacteria during fermentation will preserve the foods. So this is how people stored foods and had foods throughout the year, by creating fermented foods. Well, the human digestive tract is also a fermentation process. When we put foods into our gastrointestinal tract, the probiotic bacteria in there ferment the foods, producing short-chain fatty acids, same short-chain fatty acids that are produced in fermented foods. And the short-chain fatty acids have a similar benefit in our gastrointestinal tract as they do in preserving foods in foods that people make for storage and long-term use. In the gastrointestinal tract, the short-chain fatty acids suppress the growth of pathogenic bacteria. That's why they're useful in food storage with fermented foods. The acid pH is favorable to good bacteria, but suppresses the growth of bad bacteria. So you get in your gastrointestinal tract part of your immune system that suppresses the growth of bad bacteria. And in fermented foods, you get food storage because the short-chain fatty acids suppress the growth of pathological bacteria and allow the food to be stored for an extended period of time. Now, in Dr. Ohhira's probiotics, we've got these big external fermentation vats, which is the unique feature in Dr. Ohhira's probiotics. No other probiotic bacteria in the world is made this way. And in these fermentation vats, we start out with 12 strains of synergistic probiotic bacteria. And then at seasonally appropriate times throughout the year, organically grown foods are harvested and shredded and added to the fermentation vats. And the bacteria then act on the foods, ferment the foods, digest them, break them down, produce these short-chain fatty acids, which creates the optimal acid-base balance, which promotes the growth of good bacteria and suppresses the growth of pathogens. It's the same type of process in Dr. Ohhira's probiotic production that's in the gastrointestinal tract, a fermentation process where the bacteria break down foods, produce a wide range of postbiotic metabolites, and one of the really important classes of postbiotic metabolites are the short-chain fatty acids that are part of the food preservation system. So that's a little link between fermented foods historically, how that ties into the similarity with how the gastrointestinal tract functions, and how Dr. Ohhira created an external process that mimics the gastrointestinal tract, so that Dr. Ohhira's fermentation process, where the bacteria are allowed to grow and ferment for 5 years before they're encapsulated, creates a process where you're able to encapsulate probiotic bacteria, the prebiotic food supply, and 5 years worth of postbiotic metabolites. And one of the reasons Dr. Ohhira's probiotics is so effective at quickly restoring a pathobiome back to a healthy microbiome is that you're not just ingesting probiotic bacteria, you're also getting these short-chain fatty acids, which rapidly change the microbiome in the gastrointestinal tract. So with a pathobiome, people who want to return to good health, there's two things you need to do. You need to replace the bad bacteria with good bacteria, but in order to make that happen efficiently and effectively, you need to change the environment in the microbiome, the environment in the gastrointestinal tract, so you've got an environment that's favorable for the good bacteria. So ingesting the postbiotic metabolites, and especially the short-chain fatty acids, will rapidly change the acid-base balance, recreating the healthy balance that's favorable for the good bacteria. So you're not just depending on the good bacteria to try to fight the bad guys, you're also changing the environment so that it's no longer favorable to the bad guys. I hope that's a little explanation of the fermentation process and why Dr. Ohhira's probiotics are so unique and so effective at rapidly restoring a pathobiome to a healthy microbiome. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for educating us, Ross.
You bet.